In a lavish Manhattan restaurant, a powerful CEO publicly humiliated a waiter in front of the elite. She expected him to bow his head, apologize, and disappear like everyone else. But the man, a single father, only looked at her and said 7 cold words. "Shout at me again, and this ends." Everyone laughed. What could a CEO possibly fear from a waiter? Until he pointed up at the ceiling. And the entire room suddenly understood. Some strikes don't require touch. Lucas Reed adjusted his black tie in the staff locker room mirror and checked his watch. 6:15. The evening shift at Les Ciels was about to begin, and the reservation list was packed with names that meant money, influence, and zero tolerance for mistakes. He grabbed his notepad and slipped it into his apron pocket, then stepped out into the dim amber glow of the dining hall. Les Ciels wasn't just a restaurant. It was a cathedral for Manhattan's elite, where deals worth millions were sealed over wine that cost more than most people's monthly rent. The chandeliers hung low and heavy, casting soft light over tables draped in cream linen. Lucas had worked here for 8 months now, long enough to recognize the patterns. The louder someone spoke, the more insecure they were. The quieter they ordered, the more dangerous. He moved through the hall with practiced ease, refilling water glasses and adjusting silverware before guests arrived. A co-worker, Jamie, passed by with a tray of champagne flutes and muttered under her breath, "Table 9 tonight. Ariana Wolf." "She's back." Lucas nodded but said nothing. He had served Ariana twice before over the past few months. She came in occasionally, always with different business associates. She was the kind of guest who made you feel invisible, even when she was looking directly at you. She never asked for your name, never said thank you, and treated every interaction like a transaction she was losing money on. But Lucas had learned long ago not to take it personally. People like her lived in a different world, and he was just passing through theirs. That morning, he had driven his son Ethan to school in a beat-up sedan that rattled every time he hit the brakes. Ethan had been quiet in the back seat, staring out the window with that far-away look kids get when they're trying not to ask a question. Finally, he spoke. "Dad, when are you going back to your old job?" Lucas glanced at him in the rearview mirror. Ethan was 7, small for his age, with dark eyes that noticed too much. Lucas had tried to keep things simple, but kids always knew when something was off. "This is my job now, buddy. It works better for us. I get to be home in the mornings with you." Ethan didn't argue, but Lucas saw the way his small hands tightened around his backpack straps. The boy had stopped asking why Mom wasn't around anymore. That was almost worse. Now, standing in the low hum of the restaurant, Lucas pushed the memory aside and focused on the work. A host led a group of 4 to table 9, and Lucas recognized Ariana Wolf immediately. She was in her mid-30s, sharply dressed in a charcoal blazer, her dark hair pulled back in a way that looked effortless, but probably wasn't. She moved like someone who had spent her whole life proving she belonged in rooms like this. Behind her were 3 others, 2 men in tailored suits, and a woman with a tablet already open in her hands. Shareholders, Lucas guessed. Or partners. People who mattered to her, which meant tonight mattered too. He gave them a moment to settle, then approached with menus and a polite smile. "Good evening. Welcome to Les Ciels. My name is Lucas, and I'll be taking care of you tonight." Ariana didn't look up. She was typing something on her phone, her thumb moving fast. One of the men smiled at Lucas and said, "We'll start with the wine list. Thanks." Lucas set the menus down carefully and stepped back. Ariana was still on her phone. He waited. After a few seconds, she glanced up, not at him, but at the woman with the tablet. "Did Marcus confirm the call for tomorrow morning?" The woman nodded. 9 o'clock. He said he'll have the revised proposal ready. Ariana's jaw tightened just slightly. a flicker of tension that disappeared as quickly as it came. She set her phone down and finally turned toward Lucas, though her gaze passed over him like he was part of the furniture. "We'll take the Bordeaux, the 2003. And bring it now, not in 20 minutes. Lucas nodded. Of course. He turned and walked toward the bar, where the sommelier kept the premium bottles locked behind glass. As he waited for the wine to be pulled, he overheard Jamie whispering to another server near the kitchen door. "She's in a mood tonight. Apparently there's some big vote happening at her company. Internal drama. Marcus Crane's been pushing to restructure leadership for months." Lucas didn't ask for details. He had learned that the less you knew about the guests, the easier it was to serve them without getting pulled into their storms. The sommelier handed him the bottle, and Lucas returned to table 9 with it cradled carefully in one hand. Ariana was on the phone again, her tone low but sharp. "I don't care what he thinks. The numbers don't lie. If he wants to challenge me in front of the board, he can try." She hung up without saying goodbye and glanced at the bottle Lucas was holding. Her eyes narrowed. "That's not the 2003. Lucas checked the label. She was right. It was the 2005. A small mistake. But in a place like this, small mistakes had consequences. He kept his tone steady. "You're absolutely right. I apologize. I'll get the correct bottle immediately." Ariana leaned back in her chair and crossed her arms. "Do you even know the difference? Or are they all the same to you?" One of the men at the table shifted uncomfortably. The woman with the tablet glanced down at her screen. Lucas felt the attention of nearby tables starting to turn. He kept his expression neutral. "I'll bring the correct bottle right away, ma'am." But Ariana wasn't finished. She turned to the others at her table, her words rising just enough to carry. "This is what I mean. You pay for precision, and what do you get? Guesswork." Lucas didn't respond. He turned to leave, but her words followed him. "Do you know how much that bottle costs? Or is it all just liquid to someone like you?" He stopped. Not because he wanted to, but because something in her tone demanded it. He turned back slowly, meeting her eyes for the first time. There was no anger in his face, no frustration, just a quiet, deliberate calm. "I'll get the bottle you asked for. It won't happen again." Ariana's lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. She directed her next words to the others at the table, her tone dripping with dismissal. "This is exactly why I don't trust outsourcing. Some people just aren't built for precision work." The words hung in the air. Lucas felt the weight of them, not because they hurt, but because they were designed to humiliate. He had been on the receiving end of words like that before. Different settings, different faces, but the same intent. To remind him of his place. He walked back to the bar without another word, requested the correct bottle, and waited while the sommelier retrieved it. His hands were steady, but his mind was moving. He thought about Ethan, about the bills stacked on the kitchen counter at home, about the career he used to have before everything fell apart. He thought about the security cameras mounted in every corner of this room, recording everything. When he returned to the table with the correct bottle, Ariana didn't acknowledge him. She was deep in conversation with one of the men, something about shareholder confidence and quarterly projections. Lucas poured the wine in silence, set the bottle down, and stepped back. As he turned to leave, Ariana's words cut through the low murmur of the restaurant. "And that's another thing. If you can't hire people who know what they're doing, maybe you're not running the operation as well as you think." She wasn't talking to him. She was talking about him. To her colleagues. To the room. Lucas stopped walking. He didn't turn around immediately. He just stood there, his back to the table, feeling the eyes of the other guests on him. Jamie was watching from near the kitchen. The sommelier had gone still behind the bar. Lucas turned slowly. He walked back to the table, his movements calm and deliberate. He didn't raise his tone. He didn't need to. Ma'am, I brought you the wrong bottle. I apologized. I corrected it. If there's anything else you need, I'm happy to help. But if you shout at me again, this ends." The room went quiet. Not the polite quiet of a fine dining establishment, but the kind of silence that happens when everyone knows something just shifted. Ariana stared at him, her expression caught somewhere between shock and disbelief. One of the men at the table let out a nervous laugh. "Whoa, okay, let's just—" But Ariana cut him off, her words sharp and cold. "Excuse me? You're threatening me?" Lucas didn't blink. "I'm setting a boundary." Ariana leaned forward, her eyes locked on his. "Do you know who I am?" Lucas studied her for a long moment. Then, without saying a word, he lifted his hand and pointed up, toward the ceiling, toward the security cameras that covered every angle of the dining room. Ariana followed his gaze, her expression flickering with something she couldn't quite hide. Uncertainty. Lucas lowered his hand and stepped back. He didn't say anything else. He didn't need to. The message was clear. He turned and walked away, leaving Ariana sitting in silence, her face tight with barely controlled anger. At another table, a guest whispered to his companion. "Did that just happen?" Jamie caught Lucas near the kitchen and grabbed his arm. "Are you insane? She's going to get you fired." Lucas shook his head. "Maybe, but I'm done being shouted at." Back at table 9, Ariana sat stiffly, her hands gripping the edge of the table. One of the men leaned toward her and spoke quietly. "Ariana, maybe we should just let it go. The vote's in 2 days. You don't need this kind of distraction." She didn't respond. She was staring at the ceiling, at the small black dome of the security camera mounted above her table. Her mind was already racing. Videos, social media, public perception, shareholders, the vote. She picked up her phone and typed a message to her assistant. "Find out who manages security footage at Le Ciel. I need to know retention policies and access protocols." The reply came back in seconds. "On it." Ariana forced herself to smile at her colleagues, to continue the conversation about projections and strategy. But inside, a small, unfamiliar fear had taken root. Not fear of Lucas, fear of what he represented. A man with nothing left to lose, and a camera that had seen everything. Ariana left Le Ciel just after 10 that night, her heels clicking against the pavement as her driver held to the car door open. The dinner had continued without further incident, but the conversation had felt hollow, mechanical. She had smiled at the right moments, nodded when her colleagues spoke about confidence intervals and market projections, but her mind had been elsewhere, on the camera, on the waiter's face, on the quiet certainty in his tone when he said those 7 words. She sat in the back seat and pulled out her phone. Her assistant had already sent a follow-up message with details about the restaurant's security system. 4K cameras, cloud storage for 30 days. Managed by a third-party vendor with standard access protocols. Ariana read the message twice, then typed a reply. "Find out if restaurant staff have access to the footage. I need to know who can request it and under what circumstances." The reply came within minutes. "Most vendors restrict access to management only. Servers wouldn't have direct access unless they file a formal complaint or incident report." Ariana felt a small measure of relief, but it didn't last. She had seen the way Lucas studied the camera, not like someone making an empty threat, like someone who understood exactly what he was pointing at. She leaned back against the leather seat and closed her eyes, trying to force the unease away. It was nothing. A waiter had talked back. She had handled worse. But the memory of a scandal 2 years ago crept in uninvited. A careless comment at an investor luncheon, caught on someone's phone and posted online. The blowback had been swift. 3 days of headlines. A client threatening to pull their account. Her father calling from his retirement home in Connecticut, his tone tight with disappointment. "Ariana, perception is everything. You know that." She had spent months rebuilding her reputation after that. And now, with the merger vote less than 48 hours away, the last thing she needed was another public relations disaster, especially not one involving a waiter she had humiliated in front of witnesses. When she arrived home, she poured herself a glass of scotch and sat at her dining table, staring at her laptop screen. She opened her company's internal portal and scrolled through the latest updates on the merger vote. Marcus Crane, her vice president, had sent an email earlier that evening. The subject line read, "Thoughts on tomorrow's strategy session." She opened it. The message was polite, professional, but there was something underneath the words that made her uneasy. Marcus had been pushing for leadership restructuring for months now, suggesting that the company needed fresh perspective at the executive level. He never said her name, but the implication was always there. She was too rigid, too controlling, too unwilling to adapt. What made it worse was that Marcus had allies, 2 board members who had quietly expressed concerns about her management style after she'd rejected their suggestion to outsource the compliance division. They wanted cost savings. She wanted quality control. The conflict had created a rift, and Marcus had positioned himself as the reasonable middle ground. Ariana closed the laptop and finished her drink. She told herself Lucas wouldn't do anything. He couldn't. What would he gain? A viral video might get him sympathy online, but it wouldn't pay his bills. People like him didn't take risks like that. They endured. They moved on. She went to bed and tried to sleep, but the unease stayed with her. The next morning, Ariana woke to the sound of her phone vibrating on the nightstand. She reached for it, still half asleep, and saw 47 missed messages. Her stomach dropped. She sat up and opened the first notification. It was from her assistant. "Ariana, you need to see this, now." The next message was a link. Ariana tapped it, and the screen filled with a video player. The thumbnail showed her face, mid-sentence, her expression sharp and dismissive. She pressed play. The video was 2 minutes and 18 seconds long. It had been edited tightly, cutting between her raised tone and Lucas standing in silence, his face calm and unreadable. The audio was clear, too clear. Every word she had said came through perfectly. Do you even know the difference, or are they all the same to you? Some people just aren't built for precision work. And then Lucas's response, quiet and deliberate. "If you shout at me again, this ends." The video cut to him pointing at the camera, and the frame froze there. The caption below read, "CEO thinks she can humiliate anyone." This waiter just reminded her, everyone has limits. Ariana's hands went cold. She scrolled down and saw the numbers. 500,000 views, 8,000 comments. The video had been posted at 11:47 the night before, just over an hour after she had left the restaurant. It was already trending under 2 hashtags, "Know Your Limit" and "Respect Service Workers." She opened the comments. Most of them were exactly what she expected. "This is what's wrong with corporate America. Zero accountability. That waiter handled it better than I would have. Respect. She really thought she could treat people like that and get away with it." But there were others too. Comments from people who recognized her name, people who knew about the merger vote. "Isn't this the CEO of Wolf & Partners?" Yikes. Not a good look right before a major decision. "Shareholders are going to have questions about this." Ariana's phone rang. It was her PR director, a woman named Stephanie, who had worked with her for 3 years and never called before 8 in the morning unless something was on fire. Ariana answered. Stephanie's tone was tight and professional, the kind of calm that came from years of managing crises. "I've seen the video. We need to get ahead of this. I'm drafting a statement now, but I need to know, Did you approve any recording of that interaction? Ariana's reply came out sharper than she intended. Of course not. Stephanie continued without missing a beat. Then we're dealing with unauthorized distribution of security footage. That gives us legal ground, but it won't stop the narrative. The video is already everywhere. We need to decide how you want to respond. Ariana stood and walked to her window, staring out at the Manhattan skyline. I want to know who posted it. Stephanie's tone shifted slightly, just enough to signal doubt. Ariana, even if we find out, going after them publicly will make this worse. Right now, you're the villain in this story. If you start threatening legal action against a waiter, you'll confirm everything people already think. Ariana's jaw tightened. I'm not the villain. I made a mistake. He escalated it. There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. Then Stephanie spoke again, softer now. I know, but perception is reality. And right now, the reality is that your company's stock dropped 3.2% in pre-market trading. The board is going to ask questions. Ariana ended the call and checked her email. There were already 3 messages from board members, all asking for a conversation at her earliest convenience. The 4th email was from Marcus Crane. The subject line read, "Checking in." She opened it. The message was brief and carefully worded. Ariana, I saw the video this morning. I know this must be difficult. If you need someone to handle the strategy session today, I'm happy to step in. Just say the word. Ariana stared at the screen. Marcus had always been good at appearing helpful. Too good. She closed the email without replying and opened her calendar. The merger vote was scheduled for the day after tomorrow at 10 in the morning. She had less than 48 hours to contain this. She called her assistant and gave clear instructions. I need the name of every person who had access to Le Ciel's security footage last night, specifically anyone from the restaurant side, management, vendors, IT support. Start there. Her assistant hesitated. That might take some time. Most of those records are internal to the vendor. Ariana's tone went cold. Then make it fast. By noon, she had what she needed. The security vendor had confirmed that only 3 people from the restaurant side had accessed the footage from the previous night. The restaurant manager, the head of security, and someone from the IT department who had pulled the file for routine backup purposes. None of them had any reason to leak the video. But the vendor also noted that their portal could be accessed by approved corporate clients who had service contracts with them, which meant the leak could have come from outside the restaurant entirely. Ariana stared at the report. If Lucas didn't have direct access, maybe he had convinced someone else to pull it for him. Or maybe someone from her own company had accessed it through the vendor portal. She needed to know for certain. She grabbed her coat and told her driver to take her back to Le Ciel. It was early afternoon, and the restaurant was closed for prep, but she didn't care. She needed answers, and she needed them now. When she arrived, the manager met her at the door, clearly surprised to see her. She didn't give him time to ask questions. I need to speak with Lucas Reed, the waiter from last night. The manager's expression shifted, a flicker of discomfort crossing his face. He's here, in the back. But Miss Wolfe, I'm not sure. Ariana walked past him without waiting for permission. She found Lucas in the prep kitchen, folding napkins at a long stainless steel table. He glanced up when she entered, his expression unreadable. She didn't waste time on pleasantries. You posted that video. Lucas set down the napkin he was holding and met her eyes. No, I didn't. Her words rose despite herself. Don't lie to me. You're the only one who had a reason to. You wanted to humiliate me. And now my career is on the line because of it. Lucas's tone stayed calm, almost maddeningly so. I didn't post anything, but if you want to accuse me, you should have proof. Ariana pulled out her phone and opened the video link. She turned the screen toward him. This was uploaded less than an hour after I left the restaurant. You were still here. You had access. Lucas glanced at the screen, then back at her. Show me the account that posted it. Ariana scrolled to the profile page and held it up. The account name was generic, a string of random letters and numbers. But the email associated with it ended in wolfpartners.com. Lucas's expression shifted, just slightly. He leaned forward and studied the screen more closely. Then he met her eyes again. That's your company's email domain. Ariana felt the ground shift beneath her. What? Lucas's tone was steady, but there was an edge to it now. Look at the timestamp. 11:47 last night. I was standing in the dining room until midnight. There are cameras that can confirm that, and I don't have access to your company's internal email system. Ariana stared at the screen. The pieces didn't fit. If Lucas didn't post it, then who did? And why would they use an email address tied to her own company? Lucas spoke again, quieter this time. If I wanted to hurt you, I wouldn't have done it this way. I would have waited until you forgot about me, until you weren't looking. Ariana's hands trembled as she lowered her phone. For the first time since the video went live, doubt crept in. Not doubt about what had happened, but about who had caused it. Lucas stepped back and crossed his arms. You want to find out who posted that video? Then stop assuming it was me and start asking who benefits from you losing credibility right now. Ariana's mind raced. The merger vote. The board. Marcus's email this morning offering to step in. The timing of the video, posted exactly when it would do the most damage. She studied Lucas, and for the first time she saw him clearly. Not as a waiter, not as a threat, but as someone who understood something she had missed. She turned and walked out of the kitchen without another word, but as she reached her car, her phone buzzed with another message. It was from Marcus. Just heard the board wants to meet with you before the vote. Let me know if you need support. Ariana stared at the message, and then, slowly, she began to understand. Ariana sat in her office late that afternoon. The city stretched out below her in a grid of glass and steel. The lights were off, and the only glow came from her laptop screen. She had spent the last 3 hours going through access logs, email records, and internal communications. Her assistant had pulled everything she requested, and now the pieces were starting to form a picture she didn't want to see. The video had been posted from an account registered with her company's email domain. That alone was damning enough, but the timestamp told a different story. 11:47 at night. Lucas had been in the restaurant until midnight, confirmed by the same security footage that had captured their confrontation. He couldn't have posted the video from the restaurant and used a company email simultaneously. The IP address attached to the upload traced back to her office building, specifically to the executive floor. Ariana leaned back in her chair and stared at the screen. Someone inside her company had done this. Someone with access to both the restaurant's security vendor and the internal email system. Someone who knew about the merger vote and understood exactly when to strike. Her phone buzzed. Another message from Marcus. Board meeting moved up to tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. Let me know if you need anything. She didn't reply. Instead, she opened her email archive and searched for every message Marcus had sent in the past 2 weeks. Most of them were routine, updates on client accounts, scheduling requests, but there was one that stood out. An email sent 4 days ago to the head of IT, requesting access to vendor management systems for operational review purposes. Ariana felt her stomach tighten. She forwarded the email to her assistant with a single line of instruction. Find out if this request was approved and what systems he accessed. The reply came back within 10 minutes. Approved. He accessed vendor portal records for 3 external partners, including the security company that manages Le Ciel. Ariana closed her eyes. It wasn't proof, not yet, but it was close enough. Marcus had the access. He had the motive, and he had been the first person to reach out after the video went viral, offering to step in, to take over, to help. She picked up her phone and called Lucas. He answered on the third ring, sounding cautious. "Miss Wolfe." Ariana's tone was different now. No anger, no accusation, just exhaustion. "I need to ask you something, and I need an honest answer." Lucas didn't respond immediately. Then he said, "Go ahead." She took a breath. "You said if you wanted to hurt me, you would have waited until I wasn't looking. How did you know that?" There was a long silence on the other end. When Lucas finally spoke, his tone was quieter. "Because that's what people do when they want to destroy someone. They don't attack when you're ready. They wait until you're distracted, until you think you're safe." Ariana felt something shift in her chest. "You've been through this before?" Lucas didn't deny it. "I used to work for a content moderation company. We tracked down sources of leaked material, deep fakes, things people wanted buried or spread. I spent 5 years learning how to read digital fingerprints. Who posted what? When? Why?" Her words were steady, but the question underneath was fragile. "So why are you working at a restaurant?" Lucas's answer came slowly, like he was weighing whether to say it at all. "Because my company got sued over a mistake that wasn't mine. A piece of content we flagged as harmful turned out to be part of a journalist's investigation. The lawsuit destroyed us. I got pulled into it, and even though I was cleared, no one wanted to hire someone attached to that kind of controversy. I needed work that didn't require a background check, something that let me be home with my son in the mornings." Ariana sat in the dark and listened. For the first time, she understood that Lucas wasn't just a waiter. He was someone who had lost everything and rebuilt from nothing. Someone who knew what it felt like to be destroyed by forces outside his control. She spoke carefully. "If you were me, what would you do?" Lucas's response was immediate. "I'd stop looking at the waiter and start looking at who wanted you to." Ariana ended the call and sat in silence for a long time. Then she opened a new email and typed a message to her head of IT. "I need a full audit of access logs for the vendor portal, specifically any requests made in the past week by company employees. I need timestamps, IP addresses, and device identifiers, and I need it tonight." The response came back within the hour. Marcus Crane had accessed the security vendor's portal twice in the past 5 days. Once to request footage archives from Le Ciel, and once to download a file labeled Incident Report, November 12. The second access occurred at 11:38 at night, 9 minutes before the video went live. Ariana printed the report and placed it in a folder. Then she sent a message to the board. "I'll be at the meeting tomorrow, and I'll have answers." The next morning, Ariana walked into the boardroom at 8:55. The merger vote had been postponed, replaced by an emergency session to address leadership concerns. Marcus was already seated, looking calm and composed in a navy suit. He smiled when she entered. "Ariana, glad you could make it. I know this has been a rough few days." She didn't smile back. She set her folder on the table and took her seat at the head. The other board members filed in, their expressions ranging from concerned to skeptical. When everyone was settled, the chairman spoke. "Ariana, we've all seen the video. We need to understand what happened and how you plan to address it." Ariana opened her folder and slid a copy of the IT audit report across the table to each board member. "Before we discuss the video, I think you should see this." The chairman picked up the document and scanned it. His expression shifted. Marcus's smile faded. Her tone was calm, controlled. 4 days ago, Marcus requested access to our vendor management portal. He accessed records from the security company that manages Le Ciel, the restaurant where the incident occurred. 2 nights ago, at 11:38 in the evening, he downloaded footage from their archive. 9 minutes later, that footage was uploaded to a social media account registered with our company email domain. Marcus leaned forward, his words sharp. "This is absurd. I requested that access for operational review. It's part of my job." Ariana didn't look at him. She kept her eyes on the board. The IP address tied to the upload matches a device registered to Marcus's office. The timing aligns perfectly. And this morning, I confirmed with our IT team that Marcus also requested media consulting services from an external firm 2 days before the video went live. The same firm specializing in viral content distribution. One of the board members turned toward Marcus. "Is this true?" Marcus's composure cracked just slightly. "I was trying to help. The video was going to surface eventually. I thought if we controlled the narrative..." Ariana cut him off. "You didn't try to help. You tried to destroy my credibility right before the most important vote this company has faced in 5 years. You wanted me out, and you used a waiter as your weapon." The room went silent. Marcus's face tightened, and for a moment, Ariana thought he might try to defend himself. But then something shifted in his expression. Anger, resentment, the mask slipping. He stood abruptly. "You think you're untouchable, Ariana. You think because you clawed your way to the top, no one else deserves a chance. But you're not as good as you think you are. And sooner or later, someone was going to prove it." The chairman's tone was cold. "Marcus, sit down." But Marcus didn't sit. He gestured around the table, his words rising. "You all see it, don't you? She's rigid, she's controlling. She treats people like tools. That video didn't lie. It just showed you who she really is." Ariana met his eyes. "You're right. The video showed exactly who I am. Someone who made a mistake. But it also showed who you are. Someone willing to sabotage your own company to get ahead." The chairman stood. "Marcus, you're dismissed. We'll discuss your termination later." Marcus stared at Ariana for a long moment, then turned and walked out. The door closed behind him with a soft click. The chairman turned back to Ariana. "The vote will proceed as scheduled. But Ariana, this doesn't erase what happened at that restaurant." She nodded. "I know." That evening, Ariana went back to Le Ciel. The restaurant was closed, but she had called ahead, and the manager let her in. She found Lucas in the prep kitchen again, the same place she had confronted him the day before. He glanced up when she entered, but he didn't say anything. Ariana stopped a few feet away from him. "I owe you an apology, not just for what I said that night, but for assuming you were the one who hurt me." Lucas set down the silverware he was polishing. "You don't owe me anything." Ariana shook her head. "Yes, I do. And I want to offer you something. A position at my company. Head of Information Security. You'd be responsible for protecting our data, managing vendor relationships, making sure what happened to me never happens to anyone else." Lucas studied her for a long moment. Then he said, "No." Ariana blinked. "Why not? This is your chance to get back to the work you're good at, to rebuild your career." Lucas's tone was quiet but firm. "Because you're offering me a job because I'm useful, not because you see me as a person. You want me to protect you from the next Marcus. But that's not respect. That's fear." Ariana felt the words land like a blow. She opened her mouth to argue, but Lucas continued. "I don't need you to respect me because I can solve your problems. I need you to remember that people like me exist, that we have limits, that we don't stop being human just because we're serving your table." Ariana stood there, the weight of his words pressing down on her. She had spent her entire career building walls, proving she was stronger than everyone around her. And in doing so, she had forgotten what it felt like to be on the other side. She nodded slowly. "I understand." Lucas turned back to his work. "I hope you do." Ariana left the restaurant and walked out into the cold night air. She stood on the sidewalk for a moment, staring up at the buildings around her. For the first time in years, she felt small. Not weak, just small. When she got home, she sat at her desk and wrote a public statement. Not one drafted by her PR team. Just her words. She apologized for her behavior at the restaurant. She acknowledged that she had treated someone with disrespect and that it was unacceptable, regardless of the circumstances. She didn't make excuses. She didn't blame stress or pressure. She just owned it. The statement went live the next morning. The comments were mixed, but she didn't read them. She had said what needed to be said. 3 days later, Lucas picked up Ethan from school and drove home through the quiet streets. Ethan was talking about a book he was reading, something about a kid who built a treehouse. Lucas listened, half smiling, his mind elsewhere. When they got home, Ethan glanced up at him. "Dad, did something happen at work?" Lucas ruffled his son's hair. "Yeah, buddy, but it's over now." Ethan tilted his head. "Did you win?" Lucas thought about that. "I didn't need to." That night, Ariana stood at her office window, staring out over Manhattan. The merger vote had passed. Marcus was gone. The company was stable. But none of that felt like victory. She thought about Lucas's words, about limits and respect and the people she had stopped seeing. She spoke quietly to herself, barely audible. "I used to think power was the ability to make people go quiet. But that night, I learned something different. Real power is knowing when to stay quiet yourself." She closed her eyes and let the thought settle. Everyone has limits. The most dangerous person isn't the one with the most money or the highest position. It's the one who has nothing left to lose, but still chooses restraint. She opened her eyes and gazed out at the city. And those people don't need you to fear them. They just need you to remember. Across town, Lucas sat on the edge of Ethan's bed, reading the last page of the treehouse book. His son was already asleep, his small hand resting on the blanket. Lucas closed the book quietly and turned off the light. He walked to the window and stared out at the same city Ariana was watching. He didn't smile. He didn't feel victorious. He just felt like himself again. And that was enough.
Thank you for listening to this story until the end. Hopefully every moment, every detail in the story has brought you emotions, thoughts, and maybe a little joy or motivation. Thank you for spending time with us, and hope that the next stories will continue to accompany you and touch your heart.